Hi, everybody. Thanks for showing up. In the history of the study of language going back thousands of years, there's a particular viewpoint on what we're doing, and that is we see successful, achieved human communicative performances. Boom, there's a sentence. Boom, somebody points. Boom, there's a text. And what is our job? It's to account for this achieved performance. So back in the early days of transformational generative grammar, people would say to Chomsky, well, there can't be this transformation because a transformation would take longer. And we have tested this in the lab, and it doesn't take people longer when they're doing a transformation, to which Chomsky said, no, that's crazy. This is not a process model. This is a proof model. What we do is begin with elements, and we show that you can derive other elements, and we get the grammatical ones and not the ungrammatical ones, not a process model. Well, in cognitive linguistics, we often like process models because people actually have to put things together. And this includes the mistakes they make, the repairs they make, the thoughts they have that don't actually achieve an explicit performance. Gilles Fauconnier was always intense about talking about the process of building mental space networks. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Mental space networks, you gotta build them, right? So here's the too long, didn't listen version. We're talking about actual processes and models of putting things together in cognition to achieve the human communicative performance. Back to basics, Gilles Fauconnier. I took this out of a presentation that Gilles gave in China. I think it occurs in the 1997 Mappings in Thought and Language. But in any event, Achilles sees a tortoise, he chases it, he thinks that the tortoise is slow and that he will catch it. But it is fast. If the tortoise had been slow, Achilles would have caught it. Maybe the tortoise is really a hare. You're all experts. You're going to see, you know all the processes that have to go into this. And Gilles would talk about processes, of course. Mental space builders that tell you you've got to put up another space, like yesterday as an automated two-space builder, but other sorts of things. There's a viewpoint that shifts around, and tense will tell you where the viewpoint is located and what's in focus. So he sees a tortoise, you got the base space. And he chases it, and that's, of course, going to have a frame. And he thinks that the tortoise is slow, so now you have to have a belief space, and that he will catch it, so that's the future space off the belief space. But it is fast back to reframe the base. And if the tortoise had been slow, Achilles would have caught it. So now you have a counterfactual. Maybe the tortoise is really a hare, right? Gilles would say, and did say in many cases, that the base is something you can always return to. We routinely talk about the importance of where you start in creating this final achieved communicative performance. But so did Chuck. So C requires a perception frame, and the chase needs a co-theme frame in which there are the two elements. One of them is chasing the other. When we annotate these, we see here's the C frame or the perception frame experience, the animals, you pull these things in. Here's the co-theme. My co-author here will go through these kinds of stories. But of course, Gilles and Chuck talk to each other all the time. Indeed, here is Gilles talking about the way in which the base space is configured by reference to a base frame. You all know all of this, and here's the great quote: the base, the starting point for the construction of which is always possible to return. The last time I was on stage with Chuck Fillmore was in Bologna when he opened a conference on frames. I gave the next talk, which was frame blending, after which at dinner Chuck and Lily talked to me about, it's really the base. The base is always this great candidate for attracting another frame so that you get a frame blend. Some of my examples come from Chuck. Okay, now, the hard part, of course, is always to do the examples. And the way these examples come up is I have a project on how human beings can imagine the future. Human beings can think across time, space, causation, and agency. The acronym is CATS. And they can think about things that they've never experienced, and indeed other people have never experienced, far, far, far into the future. We're not talking about just restamping a memory. We're not talking about some of the kinds of performances other animals can do. We're talking about imagining our future. So, Thiago Torrent and I are engaged in a project currently called the Mind's Oracle on the way in which human cognition influences the way we can imagine our futures, these far distended, incredible futures. And there are podcasts and there are talks and so on, but there's also going to be a book. We're writing it now, and it's full of great examples. But they're hard to explain, and that's why I'm going to turn the rest of this over to Thiago.
In this project of discussing and studying how the way human cognition works shapes the way we can imagine future scenarios, we came across those three questions that you can see now. So, all right, we know from G that the base space is somewhere you can always return to during cognitive processing, right? And you know that in the base space, in the simplest case, we're going to map reference in a piece of language, right, to some structured cognitive. Is it okay? Yeah, yes, okay, thank you. To some structured cognitive scenario, which we would call a frame, as we demonstrated with the Achilles example. But the questions are, which aspects of this base space persist when you use it to project a long-distance future scenario no one has ever heard of, right? Or to which extent this persistence lasts in time? And then the third question would be, which factors may affect the persistence of the base? So to try to provide you with the answers we have so far, we brought some examples. So this one is not for the future or from the future, it's actually from the past. It's an ad from Australian surfer sunblock, right? When we only protect you from the sun. Okay? So this is a masterpiece for mental spaces and blending. So we have all the elements there, right? So you have only as a space builder that, you know, calls for another mental space where there is another danger. And we could frame the base space needed for interpreting this ad with the protecting frames, where you have an asset which must be protected, and a danger threatening this asset, and some protection that may be used for precluding the danger from affecting the asset, right? And we could actually, as we do in Frame Brazil, annotate this ad for those frame elements in the frame, right? So we could say that the surfers are the assets to be protected, namely their skins, that the sun is the danger, and that the protection is the sunblock. Okay? But because of how this image is composed, we know that there is another imminent danger, right? And this clue for this interpretation is given by the position of the camera used to take the picture, that triggers the interpretation that there is a shark coming, right? Of course, there is context as well, right? It's Australian surfer sunblock. Okay, so we have lots of clues for this interpretation, but even in this multimodal context, what we have is that we can identify in the mental space the surfer, the sun, the shark, and the sunblock as elements in that ad, which would be mapped to the frame as the asset, the protection, and the dangers, right? Now, since we're talking about sunblocks and the dangers they cannot protect us from, we did some research. You will see that it's very high quality and very specialized research on sunblocks. And there is a difference between sunblock and sunscreen, right? Or sunblocks can also be referred to as physical sunscreen. So they are not chemical sunscreen. If you use a chemical sunscreen or the original sunscreen, or as some of the old school cognitive linguists would prefer, sunscreen, you know, like salad. What you have is some sort of chemical that filters the sun rays, allows some of them to penetrate the skin and some other are deflected by this chemical filter. But if you are applying a sunblock, you're actually applying a layer of minerals, usually titanium dioxide, to your skin. And I know titanium sounds something really powerful, not effective against sharp points. Therefore, the ad, right? Even if it's a sunblock, even if it's a physical barrier. Now, let's talk about the future. So to illustrate the kinds of things we want to propose in this book research program, we took some ads from the Tech Trend report of the Future Today Institute. So the Future Today Institute, every year they release a Tech Trend report where they present some sort of glimpse into the future that was produced by their team or scenario forecasters based on trend analysis of what the future would look like. But instead of presenting this report as a boring report, they present the report in the form of fake ads, right? And this is the fake ad for EnviroBlock. So you see, like, the climate has changed, it has your skincare, and then you have all-in-one protection from the full range of today's environmental harm, and then you have the SPF 150 plus. It won't clog pores, and it's effective defense against plastic rain, acid rain, nicotizing pathogens, airborne carcinogens, UVA, UVC rays, microbes, ozone, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, and sulfur dioxide. Right? So the thing is, we can understand this ad very quickly, and you can understand what sorts of things it brings about the future, right? And the thing is, we know that the essence to be protection is the person, the protection is the product being announced, and then we have all the dangers that are listed there. But as it is the case for the shark, titanium dioxide cannot protect your skin against, for example, necrotizing pathogens. Right? But yet, we do understand the ad, and we do understand what it's referring to in terms of what to expect from a future of climate emergency. Okay? So what's persisting there? Not the details, but the general structure that the frame elements capture, right? So there must be a trigger, and either language or any other semiotic mode would provide clues for us to interpret this shift. So there is this persistence of the base, but it has shifted somehow. So it's no longer a sunblock, it's an enviroblock. So you have that clue there, right? So we're not looking only at the sun, we're looking at everything that this human-altered environment can cause you in the future. But it's not only that. That's another fake ad from the same Tech Trend report from last year. And you see that we are still in the realm of cosmetics and, you know, products you should apply to your skin. This is pre-baby, and the catchphrase is hide in plain sight while it's still getting noticed. So as a regular foundation, it moves with gold, it reduces eye preference, and it instantly blocks surveillance cameras. right? So in this case, we're not talking, as it is the case for the sunblock at first, about protection, right? We're talking about something that FrameNet has defined as body decoration. I know sometimes that frame names are not the best, right? But they tend to be general, okay? So in the body decoration frame, there is a decoration that it can be some sort of makeup, it can be a tattoo, right? It's something that you apply to your body or you do to your body as a decoration. And then we could say that the decoration is the foundation, right? The decorated individual is the model here in the article, and the decoration descriptor is also there. It's a non-core frame element, but it's framing this whole ad, right? So this is the kind of frame that allows you to infer what a body decoration of the future would be like, okay? But there are also clues. For example, the fact that the face of the model is pixelated. It's telling you to recognize something different as soon as you look at the end, right? And again, there is context, right? So as it is the case for the Australian, we know that the Australian surfer, sunblock, and the shark, we know that the population represented by the model is the most prone to mistakes in face recognition, leading, for example, to people being arrested for no reason. So we can blend those two frames. So because this foundation also allows you to hide in plain sight from malignant technology, you would have this frame blend in the base, as Mark said, and then there is the access, the protection, and the danger. So similarly to what happens with environment, the base frames can be blended when we have, for example, some sort of clue for that. And you can alter the access point to this base frame. So the protection now is against being recognized, and then you have an access point for blending with the body decoration. So we've been exploring persistence of the base and access point biases in this new project, as Mark said. There's going to be a book called the Minds Oracle, and also other products, so stay tuned for the near future, not the long future. And that's it. Thank you.